We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen. Please reach out to us.
Following the breaking news, Savannah Guthrie and her siblings coming out with an urgent and emotional plea, asking for proof that their mother Nancy is still alive. I'm joined now by Dan O'Shea, a retired Navy SEAL and former hostage working group coordinator at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Catherine Schweit and Josh School are back with me as well. I want to begin with you here, Dan, because you just heard Savannah Guthrie say, we want to hear from you and we are ready to listen. Please reach out to us. Does this video look like the start of a negotiation to you? And I wonder how that coordination of contact would even happen.
Well, from what the family's implying, that there reported been this ransom demand, but it was not sent directly to the family. So she's pleading, her daughter is pleading for the kidnappers to reach out directly to the family, that we're ready to talk. And really what they're asking for is proof of life. And so this is obviously a strategy. They're also humanizing their mother. I watched the entire video. It's heart-wrenching to watch, but it's very important because what they're doing is sending an important message, that trying to get the kidnappers to look at their mother as a human being, as a good soul. And this is all part of the strategy. And hopefully this will lead to communication and hopefully some resolution on this situation.
Does that video suggest to you that they believe that the ransom notes are in fact legitimate?
Well, it's unknown. I mean, I saw that first ransom came into TMZ. Why would they be sending a ransom note? And again, when these cases happen, especially high profile cases, like a very notable, Savannah Guthrie is a morning talk show host, well known, and this happens in a lot. This is very common around the world, where the crazies come out when they go after a high profile case. So, I don't know. Again, I'm not in the situation room. Local law enforcement is handling this. Certainly FBI is involved directly, helping on the case. And these guys are experts at this. A crisis incident response team. This is trained hostage negotiators. So all that evaluation is being done. That information is not going to come out publicly because that's part of the case. All this is considered very sensitive and close hold. But the fact that the family had to make that plea tells me that the kidnappers have not reached out directly to the family yet. And that's what the family's asking for, but specifically proof of life, that their mother is still alive.
We were watching them read from a piece of paper. It was obviously choreographed in the sense of they each had a part to say in that. At different times, you saw Savannah and her siblings looking off camera different ways. Do you think that hostage negotiators helped to draft or choreograph this message?
Well, there's no question the family's receiving an outpouring of support from both trained hostage negotiators within the Pima Sheriff's Office, but the FBI is involved. So they're getting advice. That message was set up for a reason, and there's a lot of clues in that message what they're asking for. So they're being advised, and this is part of the process, making this play, unfortunately.
What do you expect to possibly happen next? I mean, I go back to her ending statement. We are ready. We want to hear from you. We're ready to listen. Please reach out to us. Do you think that a possible abductor would reach out with proof of life? Where would things go from there if they did?
Well, to be honest, most kidnapping cases are resolved in the shadows. But this case has gotten such attention, such media attention. This is very similar to the case I had in Iraq, when we have a proof of life video get released and then the outpouring of demand. So it makes it more complicated, to be honest, because there's so much attention now on this case. The heat is going to be on these kidnappers and or kidnapper. So it actually raises the threat level and raises the stakes, unfortunately. But this is, unfortunately, this case got such an interest nationwide. The president has reached out directly to the family. So, but this is the reality. And hopefully it will open up a channel of dialogue and bring this abduction or kidnapping to a resolution.
I want to bring back in Josh and Catherine. And I should mention, I think you and Dan had a connection from like 2006, I want to say, in Iraq, right, or something. It's amazing to think about the two of you crossing paths in this way. But let's talk about where he was describing, because the Pima County Sheriff's Department and our own team reached out, confirming that they are reviewing a nearby trespassing case. that came back in early January. And Josh, that happened a month before this. When you think about that, how would they try to trace that back to try to ascertain if there is indeed a connection here?
Well, they're going to re-interview the person that reported it. They're going to try and get a description, although dated, from that individual. I know he's in
his 90s.
He's in his 90s. There's also a report of somebody, another neighbor, who also had a similar experience and actually had photos that were reported today that she was going to turn over to the sheriff's office. All of this is interesting because this case is very high profile, and as you can see, people aren't coming to the forefront till days later and remembering things that happened months ago. So now the investigators are going to have to go and try and recreate that and then try and figure out if that this is related at all, which takes time and resources.
Catherine, you've been clear about the amount of resources and time that this really does take to even try to approach an investigation like this. But there's also the minutia, and that includes even details like when her pacemaker last synced with her cell phone that we know is still in the home. How important is a detail like that?
All of that is so important, and that's really what the investigators are doing. When you have an incident that occurs like this, you work backwards. And so every single piece of information you can gather, you put on a timeline and you timeline it backwards in case there's somebody else who might have interacted or some other car might have come by. When you go and you canvass the neighborhood and you talk to the neighbors, you say, were you there? Was your car here? Do you have cameras in your car? Have you seen? It takes a long time to interview and then re-interview neighbors. But what you're trying to do is piece all of that together to see whether or not you can come back to some commonality. I mean, somebody's running surveillance who's going to kidnap somebody may have run surveillance for months.
I want to talk about the surveillance because there's some really interesting footage from where her home is. And, you know, I'm not familiar with the Tucson area. Many of you guys are not. I want to give you an idea of what it looks like, say, at night when you're driving through this neighborhood, okay? I mean, this was from our CNN crew that was driving around. Frankly, it's hard to see past the length of your own headlights vantage point, right? And so when you look at that, Josh, and you think about, you know, what somebody may or may not have seen or the ability of even other people's homes, cameras and surveillance to pick up footage, this adds to the complexity of the investigation.
Certainly the time adds to the complexity of the investigation. However, we don't know when they were conducting surveillance and what other clues. Were they going by during the day? Was somebody set out during the day that was not a part of the neighborhood? Had they seen him multiple times, and did they look suspicious and now the neighbors are starting to come around. And then I want to double down on something that Catherine said, which is you do all these reports, you do the police reports, and then you have somebody review them. And sometimes investigators may miss something that another investigator asked. So now you got to go back and try and get additional information from all of these folks. And then the totality of that, then you have the forensics, then you have the cell phone analysis, then you have the digital forensics. All of that coming together takes time.
Dan, I want to have my last question with you. Talk to me about the investigation, how normal it would be to interview the people who last saw her daughter, whoever she had dinner with, et cetera. Describe the almost routine nature of trying to figure out all the people she may have come in contact with. Does that give you some insight as to where the investigation is going, or is that part of the checking off of the boxes?
Well, as was previously stated, you have to do the timeline and go all the way back to the beginning of the kidnapping and then retrace all your steps. Interview everyone on the scene, and then follow up leads. I mean, it's exhaustive, and as it's coming out, new details are coming out, new neighbors are recognized. Well, I saw this car 2 or 3 times in the neighborhood, or this individual, because kidnappings are not something that happened randomly. There was definitely probably pre-target surveillance by the individual who did this abduction. And if 2 or 3 neighbors can connect those dots, it's only going to help tighten the noose around the individuals or individual who did this abduction.
Dan, Catherine, Josh, thank you all so much for your expertise. So much we need to know. Up next, an elite Border Patrol team has been called upon to assist with the physical search for Nancy Guthrie. A former member of that team will join me with a new insight into how the search may now be unfolding.